Well, hello, hello. We're back for another Wet Ink Wednesday, and I'm joined by good pal of mine, John Thompson. John, John's the leadership of Rook and Rasp, part of the leadership over there on that great actual play channel and Discord community. A content creator, a handyman. What is a jack of all trades sort of fellow, um, and
Definitely hits it well.
uh, uh, John just told me before we started recording that tries to put as many fingers into as many different creative projects as possible. So, John, welcome to my little interview show.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I mean that's kind of the thing. I love getting into whatever's out there. I'm just a gamer at heart, I guess. But yeah.
Sure. I mean, I love to look at people's walls behind me when I'm on the call, and you've got like, I mean, you're that room is a big room. You're very far across the room from that bookshelf. So
Hmm.
that's a wide, it's full. The whole bookshelf is full, even though it's a wide, wide room. So yeah, you're clearly a gamer.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
so
I yeah, I've been collecting games. We started in the 80s grabbing games here and there and just you build up a supply and I mean and then you become an adult and you get a job and then you get even more games. And I'm very much about physical copies, but my physical copies are nothing compared to like my PDFs out there, just because
sure.
I love hopping on Kickstarters and Humble Bundles a lot. So,
What's the oldest game you have in your collection, probably,
ooh,
that sees any
ugh.
sort of,
Oh, that Seas play?
well, either way, either way. What's
Because so the oldest one that I've gotten out recently would be BattleTech Solaris 7. And it's from the old Facet days. I think it's like, you know, near the end of the 90s. Maybe early 2000s, and it's the game world planet of the BattleTech universe, where uh, kind of robot jocks. You're all out there battling each other for the fans, kind of thing.
Okay,
So,
okay. So like a Blood Bowl-y kind of feel
mhm.
to it. Robot jocks. Okay. So is that like miniatures, and are they like cardboard standees? What's the
Yeah.
situation there?
So it's designed with cardboard standees, and it actually has like a range of about 10 or 15 mechs that are specialized to Solaris. They're like remakes of different mechs. But it also includes a role-playing game as well, where you're dealing with, paparazzi, you're dealing with fans and just other people in this arena. And they actually have like a fictional top 20 mech pilots that you're trying to battle your way up through.
S-
So,
This this is pretty great. So I mentioned Blood Bowl. I this I meant I this is going to be a side tangent, right? I mentioned Blood Bowl. I've never actually played Blood Bowl, but I have played a board game called Blood Bowl Team Manager, which I think is an incredible board game. I think it's so good. And it's dealing with some of the stuff that you're talking about. It's like you've got the fans and the rankings, and like you're trying to get you're managing the team, right? You want to get highlights of your players doing cool stuff, and so you're trying to do
mhm.
cool stuff. It's really just like a very elaborate area control board game. By playing resources to the table and stuff like that, you win each game or whatever. Um, but anyway, it sounds very interesting, like combining the miniatures game with a role-playing game and fans, and that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, they even did a computer game version of it not that long ago, where it was like Solaris 7 mech arena kind of thing. But they didn't focus on any of the rest of the story, which is my favorite part. So,
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know. I mean, like one of those things where you could have like the game, you're not playing the pilots of the mechs. That's a game that's happening, and you've got like other characters who are trying to do like, I don't know, a heist
mhm.
or like a hooligan style thing where you're there to like rough up the other team or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you're doing a whole game while the game is happening on. Uh,
Yeah. And well, like the game I ran because I was GMing it, we had the an assassination. The main character of our story and our group was working his way up through the ranks, and but was unassociated with any house or any like of the stables. So like any of these groups of mechs that kind of dominate all the upper echelons. And so they were going to kill him off because he was doing so good. And so it ended up being this whole assassination plot line.
See, this is yeah, this is I'm intrigued by this. I'm gonna have to go educate myself about this game. But thanks for this whole side tangent.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm
I,
good at.
I usually like the asking people like how they got started. So like clearly if your collection goes back to the 80s, like you've been in this for a while. Um,
Mhm.
was it always board games and role-playing games together, or did one
Ooh.
start and then the other one came in later, or how did that go for you?
So for me, it really was. I mean, my every family, I think, to some extent, plays board games. So that there was always that
Sure.
in the background of my life. But for my role-playing games, uh, I really credit some of my friends as a kid who got me into Palladium and got me into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons right when it first started out. So that's kind
Nice.
of where I started up. Uh, yeah.
What was your, because I also cut my teeth on Palladium games. So what was your Palladium game? You know,
Ooh,
there's about a dozen of them. So what's one was the one that
the
got you
one,
in?
yeah. So obviously, Robotech was big for me.
Sure.
Uh, but it was Ninjas and Super Spies,
Nice.
which is God, it's such a tropey game, and it's Palladium,
Uh,
so they all fit together. But
sure.
just the book had it set up, and I was also a big comic lover. But the book in the back literally has like this cyborg-esque exoskeleton armor with three claws. So yeah, so every kid in the 80s wanted to be Wolverine in the Palladium universe, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely drew a guy that had like claws, but also a big cyborg arm, and his one eye was glowing because it's like you put Cable and Wolverine together, you'd make your
Hmm.
guy even cooler. You know, somewhere I have that very terrible drawing from middle school. But yeah, it was going around at the time for sure. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, all right, so there's so much that I want to talk to you about, John, and I don't even know where to begin. So this is ostensibly going to be a wet ink Wednesday talking about Never Going Home. Let's talk about your contribution to the stretch goals of the current Never Going Home project, um, which at the time of the recording, the PDFs were just sent to the backers like yesterday. So we're going to move on to those are done. Those books are
Hmm.
very nearly done. Now we're going to move on to the editing and layout of all the stretch goals and stuff like that. So I want to ask you about that and like what, because you were one of the stretch goal writers, you did I believe if I remember correctly, again, I didn't make any notes for this interview. It's Hearts and Minds and Other Organs is the name
Yes.
of your mission for Never Going Home. So
Yep.
tell us what it's about and what players will be up against when they run that one.
So
You don't have to give the whole, you don't have to do spoilers. Keep,
yeah, no.
whatever. Let them be surprised by the end or whatever. But like tell us what's the setup, what themes are you playing with?
Well, the themes I was playing in, and I've been collecting Never Going Home as well. I love the books, and I wanted to create something that kind of ties a little bit of my passions together, which is content creation. And I was like, hey, let's throw a printing press at them, and let's have it be kind of eldritch magic that this printing press is controlling people by the prints that it's creating. And so our troops go off on this merry quest. As all quests are, and never going home, they're all merry.
So
Uh,
Mary.
so merry, and they they're going off to destroy this printing press and hopefully save the day. But it's that concept of hearts and minds, the battle for hearts and minds,
Right.
on top of it being obviously a battlefield.
Yeah.
So,
It's such a great idea, and it definitely not one that I think I think there's in the Russia book, the 1916 campaign, there's a printing press, but it's just a regular printing press. Like like you're tasked with like breaking up some dissidents who are printing illegal leaflets or whatever, Um, uh, and so, but yeah, but it's a perfect obvious thing. Like, oh no, that this is someone's made a cursed printing press that has the propaganda is alive. It's yeah, it's very fitting for the theme of the game.
hmm.
So it was fun to work on that one with you. Is there any particular moment that you want to highlight out of it? I know
Ooh,
we're smashing through this really quick, but it's
without spoilers,
yeah, yeah.
I'll say the going through tunnels, which is
Mm,
pretty early in the story. Just the idea of because I love researching when I'm creating and finding out that in this area where the story is taking place, there were all these like these public works projects that had begun prior to the war, and miles and miles of man-made tunnels that ran under the battlefields that were basically abandoned during the war. And so the idea of going through the tunnels and getting lost in them and war being going on above you, I thought that was a really cool thing to toss in there.
what what were they for? Like
Uh,
aging cheese and wine and stuff like that,
well,
or
no. I mean,
access, or
it was public works, so they were going to be used for drainage, transporting water. But yeah, they just I think that it said there were over 7 miles of these tunnels that ran under these battlefields. And I was just
interesting.
like, man, that's crazy to think about. And
Yeah.
nobody really ever touched them, or at least nothing. They were pretty much left alone because who wants to really go into a tunnel in the middle of a war?
Right. Only, well, yeah. I mean,
Only people who are very desperate.
right, right. That's neat. There's so much. One thing that's so neat with working with it's just it seems impossible the number of different people that we've pulled in to work on the project over the years that it's been a game, and everybody's got their own little thing that the research that they do, and it's not like I don't always go and check their work, as far as like the research part of it. But people are like, well, I read about this thing and I brought in this element, and and everyone's done that. There's so many different little bits to highlight and stuff like that. So I'm going to put a little bit of a pin in that, and because I'm going to ask you about like historical research
Mhm.
in a couple little steps, but um, yeah. So thanks for being part of the project. Just and yeah, we're looking forward to getting that set. Yours is going to be in a set. I think the working title for the set that yours is in is All Hands to the Pump, because it's all about like bringing in surprising assets, we'll call them, right, into the war. So the printing press, somebody did a focused on like magic that can be sent through radio waves. It's like all the different sort of
Ooh.
like technologies of the war, and the different assets that are sort of like wouldn't necessarily have been applied unless you're in a magical hellscape or whatever. So that's where yours is going to be in that collection, with some others along a broadly similar theme. So
hmm I got another one for you if you ever want me to work on it. I always joked. I joked with Brandon about that. The one I'm talking about though was another little piece of fun research. Did I ever tell you about the bringing a whale into Never Going Home?
that doesn't sound familiar. So tell me a little bit more.
Well, just
Just
for
a little
fun,
bit.
it'll probably never come up to anything, but so the whaling industry became a part of the war industry
Hmm.
because
Gotta get that oil.
yeah, whale blubber was used for nitroglycerin.
Hmm.
And so dynamite the creation of it during the wartime drove the whaling industry. And so I was like, wouldn't it be fun if a group of necromancers summoned a spectral whale to come
Yeah.
and fight the characters? So I was like, imagine this giant whale just flying at you.
Yeah, I mean, there's in the Tears in the Sea book, there's a like zombie whale in that one that you can meet. It doesn't appear in any of the adventures, but it's in the extra threats if you want to have some more fun stuff. So but yeah,
It's
not a different take on a similar thing would be interesting.
but
Uh,
yeah,
no, I
sorry.
no, I definitely hadn't heard that before. So that's fun. I mean, I'll tell you and all the viewers, right? I mean, it's our intention to not necessarily make any more big Never Going Home books, but there's no reason why we can't continue to put out adventures from time to time, as long as there's fans that want more adventures, you know. So we're not there's always the possibility. So um all right. So mostly I mean it is your writing, but I feel like that's my project, Never Going Home, right? But I want to talk about
Yeah.
all the other stuff that you do, John,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
uh I want to talk about Gutterpunk. I want to talk about Rook and Rasp. I want to talk about you bringing back Tome Travelers, because I know that's
Hmm.
something that you've been super excited about, and that's kind of the new hotness over there at the R&R HQ. And so I want to talk about all those things, but I don't know if you want to talk about those in
No,
any
no, I
order or
did
something
talk.
like that. So
Let's
uh
let's let's go.
so you one of the things that you've done is you have, I mean, I guess I want to talk about Rook and Rafts first, because that's kind of how I first became aware of you, because you reached out to me
Hmm.
to run Never Going Home actually on your long ago version of the when when it was a podcast,
Yep.
not a Twitch channel um, version of Never Going Home, and I was there, and I we recorded a couple sessions, or maybe one long session, and the videos are archived and people can go rewatch that. I There was a trench involved,
Hmm.
um, uh, and I think I put together, and I think there was a crypt involved later. Maybe we did the crypt thing at the end. I can't remember, but there was a haunted tree
Yeah.
at the end, I believe, a
Yes, there
creepy
was a haunted
tree.
tree, and there was a
So
church with children hiding in it.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's out there, and that's how I knew that I first learned about your channel. And like you're one of those people that's like, oh yeah, John, he does the Twitch channel, and like he runs these charity streams sometimes, and I'm like, but also he's done like all this construction work, and like you've got like all these past lives that are like you were a musician, and it's not like they're past lives, right? They're sort of like
Yeah.
highlights, and the sound waves continue on down through, you know. Um, but but it's so like the long history of Rook and Rasp and Passion Nerdly as a project. That's kind of one of your
Yeah, I
just go.
still use Passion
It's
Nerdly.
nothing. None of this is new. You've been doing this for a very long time, John. That's what I'm trying to say. Is
Yeah.
all these things last for a long time. And like, how many years was the you did a Ninja Crusade game, right? Is that the game
Oh
it
yeah.
was? It
Yeah.
lasted for like I want to say
It, it,
10 years. Am I right?
oh,
Is it
it was between 5 and 7.
Which is
Uh,
still a very long time for a continuous actual play of any sort.
yeah. And oh man, that one I absolutely loved running that. I don't know if you really want me to go into too much detail on that, but I had
You
a
don't.
crazy idea, and
Well,
and that was, well, just really briefly.
yeah, yeah.
There was this actual play called Bast. Absolutely amazing actual play, nearly impossible to find. There's a couple people who have put it out there, on their own YouTube channels because they ripped it from the original. But it had multiple teams. Like here's a team, and they're doing one thing, and here's a team, and they're doing another thing. And those two teams were actually adversaries in that series. And so I was like, man, this is so epic, and it felt so much. It felt real. And so I took Wooden Dojo, or the game, the Ninja Crusade game that I started with, and I was like, okay, here's this one team, and here's this one team, and they're all building towards a central plot. And God, I would almost for a while there say that it felt like that was my opus. That was my big moment. Uh,
Well, it's so I want to go backwards from that because I mean, I can't disagree with you. I mean, to accomplish a long-term project of the storytelling and the coordination, and I believe you moved states during the process of the production of that whole thing, and so like to get that momentum and change formats too, right? Didn't it start as like
yeah.
just audio only, and then later by the end you were doing the Twitch thing? So like,
Mhm.
um, it is a truly an accomplishment. But what and this brings back what I was saying before about you living so many different careers and having so many different sort of like passions that you bring to it. Like, where did is it just start with that? Like, I want to do what Vast did, or is it like, how did you decide to go from I'm a collector of board games and role-playing games and I like these games to I've got to start a podcast and then it's got to become a Twitch channel and I need to get the equipment so that I can have the different cameras on all the faces and
Now, yeah.
like how do you start where does the idea come from for you that like this is what I want to do?
So I think that, and this is something even my coworkers now, because I'm coming up on 50 years, 50 years old, and so my coworkers at work where I'm now, they're just like, what have you not done in your life? Because I'll drop an anecdote every so often. I'll be like, oh yeah, da 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 da, and they're just like, how do you know that? I'm like, oh, well, I used to do this.
Yeah,
But I would
that's
say
that's
that
how I feel.
yeah, being a musician, which has been a career for me since I was a teenager, you know, that was a primary part of me. When you're a musician, you're always looking for something to fill the gap.
Hmm.
You're always because I started off, playing bars and playing clubs, having a little bitty punk band, and you start off with one career and it doesn't suffice. And so you find a side project to do at the same time. And so you're basically working three careers at the same time.
You're the lead guitar in one band but you're playing bass in somebody else's band. It's that kind of a thing.
Well, you're the lead guitar in your playing nights at clubs. You're working a drive-through at Wendy's in the morning, and then you're working with a friend over here, renovating his home in the afternoons. And so you end up, you literally, I feel like when I was a musician, and really deep in that, I was always working 2 to 3 jobs at the same time. And so it really kind of put me in that headset of I'm always doing something else. I always got to be busy kind of thing.
So, so like the idea that you're going to do a actual play podcast, I I can't imagine that that is anything less than like a part-time job to keep that going,
It
like
can't
that
be.
if not a full-time job on top of like all of your other work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Uh
But it worked and it made sense because I started off, starting off as a musician and building up all this equipment. And I started getting the equipment to record bands. So I wanted to be able to take people, and I had gone to record. I can't remember. I think it was Texas Music Studios
like
outside of
recording
Houston.
live sets and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. So that's where my band we recorded our album. I was like, okay, looking at this. This could be fun. I could do this and earn a little bit of extra money on the side. So I started buying up all this equipment, and then uh, I, I was a gamer, and I was always like, man, and this is a so common a theme. Uh, I wanted more GMs out there. I wanted more
Mm.
DMs out there. And so I was like, man, what can I do? What can I do to inspire people or talk to people? And a couple of local GMs were just like, man, let's have some symposiums. Let's get people together and let's talk about what it's like to GM and the experience of it and the passion involved in not just playing a character, but having a world that you're
Mm.
playing with. And we had all these great dreams. And honestly, along the way, in the podcasting, I met Roxy. Uh, and she was all about podcasts. And I was like, this actually really looks good. And so Rue and I first joined up and we went to we met some people, Rob Southgate from Southgate Media Group and Matt Quiet from Quiet Gentleman. At the time, he was in charge of the Nerds domain. And also, we're like, we got these crazy ideas for these shows. Let me tell you, I want to have a podcast about dice. And he's like,
Like
I
a
don't know if that could,
review podcast of
yeah,
dice.
of
Okay.
dice. And he's just like, I don't know if that could work. The dice are a visual thing, and you want to bring it into auditory format. And he's like, well, but he gave me a shot.
There are podcasts about bourbon tasting, so like you don't have to have the object there to appreciate somebody discussing it.
And that is literally where the podcasting started. And because I had all the equipment from doing recording for bands and music, uh, we just went right into it. We already had everything we needed.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we also both Roxy and I are musicians, and so we even started recording our theme songs for our podcasts.
Nice. I I love that the first step was the idea of a like symposium to like train up new GMs. Um, because I think you've carried that through like as I've been involved in the Rook and Rasp community myself over the years. Like that is kind of you're still on that same mission, right?
Yeah,
You're like, who hasn't GM'd, who hasn't played, who wants to try this out? Like, I'll be right in the other window to help you out. Like it seems like you're still continuing that like thing forward. So I love that that's where it started because that's what you're still doing, as far as
yeah.
I can tell. Um, yeah, it's so great. So, your series, you have like several things that the channel does, right? So you've
Hmm.
got the last couple of years you've done a charity stream in support of the diversity sponsorship for the Indie Game Developer Network, which is network that I'm a part of, and so that's very appreciated. The this year's recipients of the money that you raised last year have just been announced, and so that's a thing that continues. Um, you've also got regular channels, like there's shows that are on the channel all the time, like long running shows that are every Tuesday night, or every, I guess it's not Tuesday night, but
Yeah.
every Wednesday night or every Thursday night or whatever. You set up a show and then it's regular. And then you also do your reoccurring series. You'll do, I don't know, the schedule changes, but like you'll do a block of shows where they'll like every other week for like 3 months, you'll have like a new RPG that nobody's ever seen before, or that not very many people have seen before. And they're all indie games, and you're showcasing just such a wide amount of talent, both from creators of the games to the GMs, or to the actual GMs that are playing, and sometimes those are the same people, and then sometimes there's players that are created some of the other games that are in the series or whatever. And that's seriously Let's Play, is the name of that ongoing series. So I mean that's those are some of the highlights, right, of what the channel
Mhm.
does. But like, what what are some other, I mean, what things
Yeah.
that I missed, right? I mean,
Well, no, I
I'm
mean,
telling you what you do with your channel, you already know, but like,
I, I will say during Gen Con, my goal is I'm gonna be running a panel where I talk about uh things I wish I knew before I had started streaming.
mm,
Uh,
yeah,
but and one of those things I can say here that I was going to say for that, but is know why you're getting into it.
mm,
It's I think that's a huge part of it. And some people there's a huge contingency of like, I want to make money in this.
sure,
And I was just always about, I want to make something. I want to make something. I want to have community. I want to bring like-minded people together. Uh, I want to put something out that people enjoy. And because of that, I think that Rook and Rasp has been successful, even though we're small. We've been small since the beginning. We're still kind of small, but we have a great time. And I think we have a
Yeah.
really good, solid community who enjoy the same thing, you know? And so I like to call Rook and Rasp our community theater. You know, we
Mm.
bring people together from anything. It's like, do you want to dip your toe in actual place? Do you actually want to see, hey, could I GM this? Could I actually try this? And then, do I want to actually make content on my own? And I think that that's kind of really cool, and it gives everybody an opportunity to find some place where they can get started.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Right. It's sort of the theme that I I'm a big believer in the theme that like you don't have to start with the big thing. You should start right away, but start on something small so that you'll like feel that sense of like, oh, I did the small thing and now I'm going, you know. And so to I mean, I say that with like the 200 word RPG or make a zine, those kind of things. Like you don't have to make the 350-page source book, right? As your
yeah,
first product. You know, you can make a zine first and be done in 8 pages and put it out digitally and you know, now you've made a game. But I think like what you're just saying is it's the same thing with the actual play. Like you don't have to set up your own actual play channel with the ads and the monetization and have a cast of characters that are, you know, your friends or whatever. It's like you can do like a game on somebody else's channel and see if you like it. And if you do like it, great. There's more opportunities. You know, I love that. It's such a um, I don't know. I mean, it's just
yeah,
lowering the barriers for entry. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
yeah. And then so that's like the part for the streamers. But then indie games, which you mentioned, we do a lot of indie games because uh, really, I mean, I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying if you want to make money in RPGs as an actual player, you're going to play D&D. You know,
Sure,
if
sure.
that's what you want to do, there's your niche. But
Right.
I was like, there's so many great games and so many great creators, and there's kind of this glass ceiling
Mm,
of
for
if
sure.
I want my game to get an actual play, if I want to put it out there in this format where people can observe it, uh, you go to some of these other groups and they're like, "Hey, sure, we'll do an actual play, but you've got to throw us 1,000 or a couple thousand."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can't guarantee a return to those people.
Right.
You can't guarantee that it's going to have the effect that they want. And sure, yes, it is to gain their name out there and it's advertisement. But I just feel like a lot of times I would rather just be like, hey, let's work. I'm very much that community minded person. I'm like, let's work towards a community. Let's make the changes that we want to see. I want to see more indie games. I want to see more indie creators. I support the IGDN because I want to see marginalized voices get raised
Absolutely.
within gaming. And so here's this opportunity. I'm not going to charge you a thing. And I'm going to pour my passion into it. And I'm going to find other people who are passionate about it or doing what they do. Let's all come together and make something, something. It might be amazing. It might. I hope it's amazing. Uh, but the thing is that that's what I love. I love this game people together, letting the passions flow and making something.
Yeah.
And in the end, that I think it serves that portion of the community to get it further out there, to get that indie game a little bit more.
Yeah. I y- keep on keep on preaching, brother. It sounds great. You know, like yeah, and this is the it's great. I mean, I am aligned with these goals. Like this is why me as a relatively small, I mean, we're bigger than some indie companies, but we're not even we're maybe in the mid tier now, you know, Wet Ink Games, but we're huge supporters of what you do with Wet Ink or with Rook and Rasp and your shows because it's exactly what you were just saying. It's like I want to play in other people's weird games and be a player that gets their game played and I want to have people come together and play my games when I have something and you can't beat the price either, you know, as far as like the company who wants their game featured or
Yeah.
the creator team or whatever, you know, like And but the price, the thing that was occurring to me is like sort of the price, quote unquote, is to be part of the community, which is not necessary, which does take time and attention and stuff like that. I mean, it isn't you don't have a lot of I feel like I feel like a lot of the people who are the most active in the community over there at the Discord, especially, like, because you've got a pretty active Discord, um, which I'm in all the time and kibitzing and checking out what other people are doing. It's it's like worth the price, right? The price of being part of the
Yeah.
community in that way is like, I find it anyway, rewarding to be part of the community that you've built. And I want to like not make like keep that level like in my own interactions, right? Like no, no, I don't want to bring down the level of like the vibes and the positive energy that's going on over there. I want to add to that, right? Because I find it a nice place to be, and so anyway, you're doing great work.
Well, thank you. You can tell I get really animated about this kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean it's great. So I mean, we've been talking for a while. I got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. So
yeah.
give us like what's your current I mentioned a bunch of the projects that you do, some of the shows, but I don't have them on the tip of my tongue. So what's your current sort of lineup on the Rook and Rasp? If people are going to, twitch.com/Rook and Rasp, what are they going to find there on a regular basis right now?
Well, right now, so we have a mini series that we're doing with Matt Quiet. So one of the guys I started with Nerds Domain, and he's bringing us Fallout from Modiphius, which he does a phenomenal job of GMing. Absolutely wonderful. I love it. He captures the essence, and he's actually created an Indianapolis
Hmm,
uh, version of the of Fallout, and
fun.
all his players except for me are from Indianapolis. So they're all talking about street signs and different places. And if you've been to Gen Con, you might know a couple of them. And
Sure.
I'm just like, I get to be the audience foil because I'm like, oh, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
Where are we going?
Been in
Uh,
the bunker the whole time, guys. I don't know.
and so that's one show we're doing.
Vault. I'm sorry, it's not called a bunker, it's a vault.
Yeah. But so we have Fallout Naptown, which
Naptown.
Indianapolis, that's
I see.
Naptown is a
Okay,
local,
Naptown.
yeah, it's a local
That's
colloquial for
yeah,
Indianapolis.
that's not what I've heard, but I'm not local to Indianapolis either.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Uh,
Naptown.
and then we have Smuggler's Blues, which is going right now, and that is one of the longest running actual plays for the Star Wars by Fantasy Flight, Edge of the Empires. It was originally the Redemption podcast and ran for, I think, 9 seasons. Had a really good listener turnout. And so the game ended, but the GM and a couple players wanted to keep it going to some extent. And so it's the GM and two of the players, and it's a side story called Smuggler's Blues. And so that's being ran on Tuesday nights right now, but it's on opposite nights from tonight. Uh, and then now I've also started up Tome Travelers, bringing that back.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that, because like, what was it before? And quickly, so then bring it back. What's the yeah?
Well, Tome Travelers was my first real podcast that I cut my teeth on. And our
Okay.
first season was a look at the fiction of the world and the mythos of any game. And then the second episode in each one was a character creation.
Hmm. Okay.
And that was our first season. And I really feel like I cut my teeth on that one because we got to know, got to see the audience thanks to, Southgate Media had options and tools that a lot of other groups didn't. So we actually got to see like all the metadata of what we
Hmm.
were putting out. And what shocked me was we would get almost 3 times the listeners on the character creation episodes. I mean,
Hmm.
I was just like, really? That's what people are into? They want to hear the character creation?
It's such a
They don't
big
want,
part of a role-playing game sometimes. So
yeah. And so literally 3 times the number of
yeah, yeah.
listeners. it always surprised me. So that was our first season. But after a while, after about 20 or 30 game systems, we were just like, oh, we're getting tired of making characters all the time. And so we changed in our second season and we started adding we added dramatic readings with original music and to the beginning of every episode, and we started really changing it up. And that it even skyrocketed more, and we started bringing on guests for that show. Which also, every time we brought on a guest, we would see that increase.
Nice.
Uh, and it was fun. It was so much fun to record that. But then around that time, as we're going through it, actual plays are taking off.
Sure.
Everybody's like, "Oh, actual plays." I mean, this was before COVID. COVID actual plays exploded.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Uh, but so we started getting into actual plays, and Tome Travelers got put on the back burner for a bit.
Yeah.
I think like one of our last episodes we did was a live episode at Comic Palooza in Houston, Texas, and it was for the World of Darkness. You know, we talked about the World of Darkness in general, uh, and that was it. And then we just dove headfirst into all the actual plays, everything imaginable. And now here we are a few years later, about 4 or 5 years after it's been away. Um, and I'm like, our actual plays were actually, we've noticed in recent years that actual plays uh, aren't getting as much of a reception as they used to.
Are we post peak actual play? Is that what
We are actually. I think that we're coming out of COVID and tables are gathering again. There's also pay for play GMs out there. And I've done that myself. I have paid for a GM to run a game for me.
I was
And
going to
so
say the other way around, that you get
no,
paid
no.
for
Oh, I wish.
it.
Haven't hit that point yet. Um, but I was like, I was like, what is it time to bring back Tome Traveler? And Tome Traveler really was about, hey, here's this explosion in the tabletop community. This was before the 50th anniversary of Gen Con. It was maybe 2, 3 years before that. And the tabletop community is just blowing up. And I was like, here's this space and so many people coming into it. I want to tell people, hey, there's so much out there to get into. That's what Tome Traveler really was supposed to be about was, hey, let me show you what all's here.
Hmm.
Throw the gates wide open.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, yeah, but now we're seeing kind of that reemerging gatekeeping. We're seeing people, it's kind of getting a little bit ridiculous out there. It's like, is it time for Tome Traveler to return? Or is it time to say, hey, let welcome? I mean,
Hmm.
it was like a year or two ago, they were saying that the tabletop industry in the next 5 years is going to double in size. And
I
that
mean,
in
it's been on a growth, like, I mean, like, I can't remember the numbers, but it's like a lot of growth in the tabletop space for sure. Like I mean, obviously 2020 is a lot of it. People bought all the board games to play at home, and people bought the role-playing games, but like, it's continued to grow. It's slowing down a little, but it's still growing.
Mhm.
It's still growing. So like,
Yeah. And
it's
it's more the properties themselves that are slowing down. The growth is still overall the market is this still growing at an incredible rate. But I was like, is this the time? Is this time where I say, let's bring back, Tome Travelers and tell all these new people coming in, hey, welcome. There's
mhm.
so much to see. Let me show you what's out there.
Yeah.
And so we've expanded, we kind of expanded the cast. I kind of was like, I want to do maybe The View meets tabletop
Okay.
and get a whole, get a group of people together who are passionate about the subjects. Maybe they disagree a little bit, but let's all get together and talk about games. And then we're going to actually, our first episode, I wanted to poke fun at all the gatekeeping. And we did an episode where it was, let's talk about what are the essential role playing games, but compare it to essential board games. Everybody's like, these, I've, do you have any friends that are like, you don't need all those board games? You only need a few board games.
I don't think I know very many people who limit themselves on their board game collection,
Yeah.
other than myself. I have a very like has to be something I'm really excited about before I get it. But most of that's because I have all these other friends who like just have extensive collections. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think I know. I think I watched that episode or most of it. I may not have seen all of it, but yeah, I mean, it is sort of like a there's definitely debate about like what are if you're going to buy 10 games, what are the 10 you should get, that would give
Hmm.
you they're either the evergreen games or the perennial favorites, or they're the ones that'll give you like a good diversity of play experiences, right? And so like translating all of that into RPGs the same way, like what are the 10 RPGs that like, oh, you're new to RPGs, here's your starter kit.
Yeah.
Um, I
And
don't know
so,
if that's
yeah, I
the way
want
you were going with it or not, but
it kind of was the goal, but at the same time, when you got five people sitting down with you, you never know what's going to happen when they start talking. Because I mean, that's the idea is
sure.
we're going to talk and let's see where the conversation goes. But I was like, it was an interesting way to get started, to kick off, and also to really some of the people that were on the show have played with each other. Some of them hadn't. So this was also an opportunity for everybody to get together and meet. And so
Yeah.
that was really where we went in that first episode. But I want to, talk about all, different systems. Uh, Jokingly, I want to have a wake for the roll and keep systems. Uh, you know, because there aren't too many of those left out there. AEG with their roll and keep systems. I was just like, I kind of miss them a little. But so
I
let's
I don't know what that is, so I got some more
Oh,
education to do for myself.
it
Uh
really quick attribute skill, roll, give you a dice pool,
yeah.
but you only get to keep your attribute. You roll all the dice and then you pick as many dice as your attribute, and
Okay,
that's
okay.
your final tally. So it's your rolling, but you're only keeping a certain amount.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a cool way to do dice pool, I suppose. I like that what do you put in the Venn diagram between the two? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Um Having a, dice pool D6 game myself, like that's yeah, I get
yeah,
it. Um all right. So we don't have too much more time here,
no
but
worries.
I thanks for going through all of the like current shows. Links to the channel will be in the thing, in the description of the video. We'll have people come. Hopefully they want to see one of those three shows that you just talked about, or I'm sure you'll have another season of or another series of Seriously Let's Play
Yep.
at some point this year.
It's all so my goal in the future is always after Gen Con. I want to meet
Mm,
with everybody,
yeah,
find
yeah.
people, find new games, and then right after Gen Con, then we'll start recording them and tossing them out to the world
Yeah,
again.
that makes
So,
sense. With such
and
a
it,
such a
yeah.
focus on like new releases at that con, like that's sort of the start of the season, I guess.
Hmm.
Uh,
But yeah, so that's where I'm starting off. But I will. We're actually talking with Nerdy City right now. We're going to be doing a special little one shot of Holomatics. So,
yeah, I I've talked to Megan Jaffe like 3 years ago about Holomatics, and so I'm like, maybe it hasn't been 3 years yet, but it's like, great, just let me know when it's ready. Like, and
hmm
they've been working on it, and I'm excited for them that it's getting closer to the time for the showtime for that because it is I don't know, it's just a great concept. Well, I mean, we don't have to do a commercial for them totally, but they've got
nah,
their
but
80s nostalgia thing, and so this one is they did to be too broad about it, right? They did the boys shows with command droids, mask and
mhm,
transformers and stuff like that. So this is the girls game, right? That you're going to have Gem and the Holograms and other sort of more uh you know less about robots and more about like music and imagination and stuff like that.
which
Uh,
segues game.
yeah, sure. Where is it? I don't know where you're segueing to.
Well,
Take me away.
segue gaming and music, Gutterpunk.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go. I did want to talk about Gutterpunk and because you one of the things about it is that you published it as like, I don't remember exactly the wording, but it's like a Rook and Rasp imprint or something like that. It's like you've got this channel and you've got this momentum and long running series and stuff like that. And you're like, and also now we publish games, And so what is Gutterpunk and what's I mean, because it's your game, right? Your
Yeah.
first real like I did it all myself kind of game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did all the writing for the system. I had people come in and guest and give little stories that I kind of turned into almost a zine feel.
Yeah.
Like the 80s or not 80s, more like 90s record store, go in, pick up the zine
Yeah,
off the
yeah, yeah.
rack. Uh, but so Gutterpunk is a brainchild that kind of is the merging of two of my passions with music, specifically punk music and gaming, where characters are taken from our world to a almost a parallel dimension, where the different forces that we consider kind of vague ideals or things that we talk about, such as the man or authority, uh, and they are real forces in this world. Uh, and the monsters are real. There's all kinds of things all over the place that people would normally be afraid of being an actual real thing. And but on top of that, I was like, in this world, magic is music and music is magic. And that is your way of fighting back, other than just, meeting everything with attitude, uh, like a punk would.
Right.
And so it was my first time to create a system, create a world, and I love it. I honestly am very thrilled with it. I don't know if I caught lightning, and I don't think it's one of those kind of moments, but I definitely captured my passion in a bottle. And
Sure.
I'm hawking it for change at different cons.
Yeah. I mean, I read it and I contributed a couple stories of myself when you were talking about when we were talking about live recording, I've got a case somewhere of the like cassettes that I have from the brief period in which I went to punk rock shows in my own life. So I was able to contribute some of those stories there. So I'm a contributor to it, but I'm also a backer, and I read it, and I think it's so you with the zine format and the collage old photographs, and there's I assume photographs of you in there somewhere, uh,
Hmm.
and your bands, and it's such an intriguing world. I know that something's caught my attention when after I've read it, I'm like, okay, I must immediately try to contribute to this world. Like if I want to like make something that fits into this world, then that's something that it's something that I'm excited about, right? So I read
Yeah.
Gutterpunk earlier this year, and I think I sent you a message about like, okay, so the last page is like, now it's yours, make your own stuff. And so I was like, here's my idea for an adventure set in this world, and you're like, do it, man. So I haven't done it yet, but maybe now that I've got some other projects out from under me, I'll I'll work on my Gutterpunk adventure. But yeah, it's can you talk a little bit more about the magic as music
Yeah.
system? Because I think that's a pretty interesting part of
Well,
it, right? Other than
yeah.
just the theme of like we're punk rockers and we're gonna, hit you with a big sound
Yeah.
wave or whatever. Like what's actually happening there with the game side of it?
Well, so one of the things I wanted to really do, and I'm probably going to sound a little bit ostentatious with it, but I was like, I want a game that blends the genre, that kind of takes one art form and maybe tries to capture another. Because I mean, art forms, trying to capture something from another. How does a painting show a song? How
Right.
does a poem capture a painting? How does, all these different things? I was like, there's so much media out there about being in a band and being a musician, and it never captured it to me. It's
Hmm.
like maybe Purple Rain comes really close because obviously Prince is in it and he knows the business. But there's so many movies about music. I'm like, this is not how it is. This isn't what I feel when I get on stage, or this isn't,
Hmm.
And I was like, so that was like the source. That was like the impetus behind it. And I was like, okay, so how do I do that? How do I capture music in a game? And so you are creating a song. Like the game system itself uses different words to associate behaviors and actions. Like, you know, being there's 5 different words that does that. But then I was like, okay, now here's our magic system on top of that. So you have your rules for chance and, you know, overcoming obstacles in the game. But the magic itself, I was like, I want music. I want music to be the magic. Well, how do you do it? What does music affect? You know, it affects an environment. It affects the people listening to it. How long does it affect it? You know, and so I created the riff system from that, where it actually uses a tangible form of music writing. Depending on where you're from, I was always taught that it was Nashville method. That's what, like, the guys that taught me to play guitar, they're like, this is what we call Nashville method. And it's like, if you ever are watching a movie and you're watching it, somebody, you know, on in the movie, somebody yells, "Hey, go to the 7," or "Hey, go to the 4." That's literally what they're talking about, is this idea that all musicians, even guys that don't know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they all understand this idea of the numerics of what falls within certain songs. Like, you don't, it's very easy to count 1 to 8, you know. It's pretty easy to do that. So if somebody yells that and you know what key you're playing in, or what key, what note you started playing on, somebody yells out where to go, you can do it. And so I was like, okay, let's compact it all together. And this way, when you're making this magic in this world, you actually can, uh, at the end, have a song. You actually could write out this spell that affects a certain amount of people, that fits within a certain location, that lasts a certain amount of time. You know, design the effects even, and then afterwards have a song that you could go pick up a guitar or something else and actually play.
That's cool. It's
So
cool. Have you done that? Is there like record like not you talked about making your intro soundtracks or intro theme songs,
yeah,
right? Have you made some out
I
of
have.
play?
Yes, to test it and make sure it worked.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was like, okay, let's roll this up. Let's see what happens. And I mean, it's very loose. I mean, it's a
Sure.
game book. It's not a music book. I'm not trying to teach people music. I want people to be able to play the game, and even if they know not, if they're tone deaf and don't know anything about music, they can still play the game.
Right. I think there's
So
about a page of music theory in the book,
yeah,
you know, just to give you the some of the concepts, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah. And so yeah, I was just like, okay, and rolling it all together, I was just like, okay, maybe I have something here. I don't think I think I've come close, which is why I'm still continuing in that universe. I'm like, Gutterpunk is a great start.
Right. So this is the final thing that I want to talk to you about because your trash world of the gutter and all of the punks fighting. I mean, you there's like these hazy beings that are like called the fuzz and they're all static and distortion. And so I mean, it's very of a piece with each other. It feels very, you know, 70s underground, 1970s
Hmm.
underground sounds, basement, you know, shows kind of stuff. And then you're like, you're going to continue that world, but what are you continuing it in? Because to me, I'm like, I need explanation of how you go from this to the next thing you're working on.
Yeah.
So
So
tell us what it is and tell us how you got to there.
so the next book that I'm going with is called Baroque. The title I've already got is Baroque and Palaces. So Baroque and Palaces.
Yeah.
And you know, I love Gutterpunk, and I will never knock it. It's my first game, but I was like, after running it a few times, running different crews through it, I was like, there are questions that I never answered.
Mm.
Uh, why?
Yeah.
Why are people whisked away? How are they whisked away? What are the forces at work here? How long has it been going on? Did it only come
Mm.
into existence with with punk music? Are there other musicians there? And so I really started pouring myself into it, and I was like, okay, how long has musical rebellion been around? And I really started finding, you know, this historical research.
That's
Uh,
there it is. That's the pin that we put in earlier.
yeah. Started going and looking, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna tie my world to the Baroque time period. But when people think Baroque, they think the name is supposed to mean ostentatious, and it was this over the top, opulent era of art. But and so like people are thinking, oh well, Mozart was at the end of that time period.
Right. He's
Uh,
he's like, yeah, he's almost after, right? It's
Yeah,
the
he's pretty much after it. I mean, the people that influenced him were before. Beethoven was during it near the end. Uh, but there's this, a lot of musicians. But at the same time, there's a lot of upheaval. The 16, the years that we're talking about is 1600 to 1750. And there is some of the worst things that happened in our world that we still live with the aftershocks today.
absolutely
Racism, colonialism, violence, war, nationalism. All these forces also occurred during the Baroque time period.
right.
And on top of that, though, there's this hidden element of musicians in that era that were, the troubadours, the jongleurs, the minstrels, and they rebelled. And there was some amazing rebellion. And I think it was one song in particular that I found. And this is a real song. Let me pull it up really quick. I'll this, if you don't mind.
Mm,
Uh,
go ahead.
but so this is called the Anarchy Song from 1648. And I mean, so it's very simple lyrics at the very beginning. Now that thanks to the powers below, we have each done our due. The mitre is down, and so is the crown, and with them the coronet too. Come clowns and come boys, come hobbledehoys, come females of each degree. Stretch your throats or bring in your votes and make good the anarchy. And I was like, holy fuck, damn, that's some punk.
All right. Well, I mean that's a good argument for the connection between the two things. And
Yeah.
I mean it is I mean, right. I mean the
And so the
you have the Reformation coming in the previous century and the Counter Reformation then in the 1600s, and like you're talking about that upheaval, and like all of that was exported to, all of the European colonies, and they dealt with it all there, as well. It is
yeah,
a time of upheaval, a lot of upheaval,
yeah.
um,
And I mean, Spanish Inquisition,
sure,
the 40 Years War, the colonization of America,
right. All of
uh,
the and,
you know,
and all the attendant problems
pirates.
there. That's true. Pirates.
Yeah.
I mean the wars of religion that I'm mentioning, that those don't end until 1648. So
Yep.
that's
The creation of Marseille and all the craziness that happened in France during that time period. So I mean, it's I was like, okay, could we even I mean, the plague. One third of the world
well,
is dying around you.
that's a little earlier than that. A little earlier than that.
Well, I mean, still, I
But
mean,
it
we've
certainly didn't
got
go away.
one at that time period. One third of the population is in the state of dying
Hmm,
in Europe, and we're all at the same time going to war. And so countries and churches are, you know, pushing out all this nationalistic and religious music to try and control people. And you have tons of musicians who are just going to town on them. And I was like, this is a time, and the guitar. By
right.
1600, the guitar is becoming this major instrument. By 1650, the way that we tune the guitar today, they were doing it. They started it then. By 1650, everybody was turning the guitar in the exact same way.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, here's my point in history.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what if all this horrible stuff is going on around you? Assassinations, whatever, all this terrible, terrible things in your world. And you're this like, I got yeah, in the bar. Imagine you're this sitting there, you're like, man, I wish I could just leave this world. And maybe somebody in the corner, a little old man looks over at you and says, "What if you could?"
Mm.
And all of a sudden, there's the goal of this book, Baroque and Palaces, is the creation of the gutter. And it didn't start off that way. I will say that. I'm not going to give away too much else,
Oh
but it
yeah,
did
don't
not
give away.
start off the gutter. It started off as this prime idea of let's make a place where we can escape.
Yeah. That's so uh I'm thoroughly convinced, John. This is I told you to convince me, explain it to me, and box checked, you have done it. This is I'm very intrigued by this. Um yeah, I mean the dynamism of the especially Europe and it's all of its attendant reaching parts at that time. Well, I mean, you've got there are other I don't know as well, but I mean that's the Ming Dynasty as well. I mean
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of things happening at that time period.
yeah,
So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. This sounds great, and I hope thanks for this teaser. This we'll be looking for this when it gets ready. I'm sure you're going to take your time with it. So
yep.
is
Well,
the idea that you'll be like some of the troubadour type people that you mentioned? Like, are they going to
hmm
be the ones that are sort of the same function as the
yeah,
player characters, right? You're going to be these sort of uh,
yep,
rebelling musicians who then are trying to build this world. Um,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, because theater troops, and that could move around the country, uh, were always like one step ahead of the law. A lot of times, they were also, always under threat of being arrested,
Right.
mistreated horribly. And yeah, you're with a found family, and part of the game is so you're tied to the real world, which doesn't exist really in Gutterpunk. You're in the gutter
Yeah.
in Gutterpunk, which makes Gutterpunk such a great teaser into the world. It's like, it's that moment of getting that taste. And then Broken Palaces is okay, you're in the real world, you're this group, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, you're someplace else. But in that game, in the game I'm designing, um, you move between the two worlds. And so
Interesting.
you're dealing with the idea of, okay, here's this place. It's almost magical. It's almost perfect. What is mankind going to do with that?
Oh yeah. Well, but then yeah, I mean yeah, I like that because I was accused recently of being a nihilist, and I have no I there's very good evidence for it. But like it's sort of like already because you already read Gutterpunk, it's going to go badly in another
Yeah.
300 years, but like to go back to the beginning and sort of play with that like the optimism and the potential
hmm
that is at the beginning of this world. Very intriguing, very intriguing. I don't want to make you put a timeline on this, but this is like it's going to be ready when it's ready, or do you have like a anticipated like I think
Okay.
it's going to take me 18 months or I don't know. I don't I
Well, so here's the clincher.
yeah,
I have the book, my portion already written.
nice.
I'm going to write myself a mission for the book, which I'm certain you know all about getting missions into books.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and then I did have a mission in Gutterpunk as well, which I wrote. But I also want to start reaching out to other people and start getting other people's views in the world, especially in this situation of we're now dealing, I mean, God, we're dealing with music is an emerging genre in RPGs. So it's got that to it, but it's also got this, it's going to be a historical RPG, which is also
Right.
something that, God, what am I doing to myself?
I,
And
you're following your passions like you always do,
yeah.
I think.
And so yeah, I just like, I want to get some more people in on writing for it. I've got the start of artwork that I'm doing. I actually, oh God, I'd love
So
to
this
show
is
you.
this is way further
Yeah.
along than like it's a dream. It's
Oh
like
yeah, no,
you're if you're commissioning art already, this is pretty good. Pretty far
yeah,
along.
yeah. Well, that, and I also, I don't toot my own horn. But I do some of the art ever so often. Like the if you in Gutterpunk, there's the audience along the bottom banner and of the page layout, and then up above the page layout there are lights for stage
Mhm.
lighting. And so I've done another one of those for the layout for this book, where it's actually people hoisting crosses and swords raised in the air and guns held up. And then up above are like are clouds with trumpets of angels.
Nice,
And
nice
so I'm trying to
theme.
continue
Yeah,
a visual theme.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, I no, I'm God, I don't want to put myself to a timeline, but I can say that it
yeah.
is there. I've got it off to I've got it off to the first people to start looking at it and telling me what they think.
Nice. That's incredible because I know, yeah, I know you've been plugging away at it, but I had no idea it was so far along. So that's amazing, and I look forward to it being on offer someday soon. Uh, John, thank you so much for your time tonight to talk to me about all the stuff that you do. It's been a really great conversation that I mean, I've enjoyed it, and
Yeah,
I have to end up with like I've mentioned a couple times some of the links to where people can find what you're working on, like the Rook and Rasp stuff, but like give it to us all again.
yeah.
Where can people check out more of what you do?
The best place to start is our website, which is www.rookandrasp.com. That will give you links to Gutterpunk under our games that we've created. It'll give you a link to our Twitch channel, our YouTube channel, our everything, our social media. We also have a write up on what our if you want to know more about Rook and Rasp, we have our vision statement is also there. Links to our podcasts. So all that is right there in
It,
one
put it
place.
all on one website.
Yeah,
How much easier could it be?
yeah. And so just go there, and uh, if you are interested in our Discord community, I would say go to our Twitch. I don't think I have the link up on our website just because, cut down on spam traffic,
Sure.
people that just, randomly click to come and, sell us the latest in, cat braziers or whatever else. Uh, but yeah, go to our Twitch channel, and we always have in our Twitch channel, it'll bring up a link to our Discord. So
Excellent. All right. Once again, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you at the cons, where you'll be,
yeah,
what did you say earlier? You were hawking your wares, or what did you call it?
hawking my wares at random, for spare
Yeah,
change.
for spare change. Right. Well, again, thank you so much. We'll see you out there on in the gutter, I guess.
You got it.
And I want to thank you, everyone who watched this video, for watching.